did a video earlier that got a little chaotic, and or a lot chaotic. So, like, the whole point of it was talking about the shadow. And then, since I was doing the video at an earlier time than I normally do, I ended up messing up a squirrel and interfering in his day. And then he looked at me and, well, okay, before that, at first I thought a bird had dropped something on me, and then found out it was a squirrel, and there was like a chunk of grass that had landed on my shoulder, and it was kind of weird. And I thought it was a bird, and I made this comment of, oh well, as long as it's not shitting on me, or something to that effect. Well, by the end of the video, I got shat upon and didn't even realize it. So it was a whole thing. And then, at one point the squirrel was in the tree yelling at me, and I looked it up, and it sounded like the squirrel alarm call that he was doing, and he was just staring at me. So that was impressive. And it was like a whole thing earlier. And then I started thinking about like cards that I pulled last night, and the first one talked about transformation, got a blue butterfly on it, and it talks about how when you're going through a transformation, it's not just taking the old and repackaging it, it's becoming something completely new. No. Got this ball rolling back and forth between my feet again. So yeah, it's taking something, it's making something brand new. It's not just repackaging the old. So then the other one was this picture that had a tornado and all these butterflies in it, and it says healing chaos, and it talks about chaos as a profound activator for healing. So I'm just thinking about these two things earlier in the day as I'm trying to talk about like the shadow stories and whatnot. Yeah, but it was just kind of goofy and chaotic, and I ended up getting shat upon, and it was funny, and I didn't even realize it until later. So, and the thing I put on the other video, I think I labeled it navigating the shadow and pissing off a squirrel or something. And then something in the comments was, or not in the comments, but in the description, that time I inadvertently manifested getting shat upon by a bird. Because I totally did. So, yeah. And then I was thinking about it like in the context of where it was at and what I was talking about and all that stuff. Because like that's something like I could tell my mom what was going on, and she'd be like, well, you're not going to do it then, right? That's going to like be the line in the sand. You're having squirrels throw things at you and the birds shitting on you, then clearly you're not doing what you're supposed to be. And it's like, on the contrary, I feel like, energetically speaking, I'm very much where I'm supposed to be, and life's just throwing me these little things to see how dedicated to the path I'm on that I am. And as I said, I thought it was hilarious. I told my brother about it and sent him a picture of this random spot on my shoulder and everything. He enjoyed it. He's like, well, shit. It's like, yeah, that kind of thing. Such is my life. I feel like there's definitely going to be more. I just don't know what it is yet. Meanwhile, I have my healers staring at me like they're my little audience as I'm doing this video. Probably because the last one's so jacked up that they just don't know what to expect anymore. I don't either. So I spent some time hanging out with Gracie, and it was just like nonstop. She got dropped off with me around 12:30, and I made us some lunch, and then we went back to her house because they moved into this house last year, and there was something with the carpet that needed fixed, and so somebody came to fix that, and so we were over there for that part. And then while we were there, my aunt with the puppy, my brother calls her Aunt Puppy, but not for that purpose, but she messaged me to ask me if I would go potty the puppy, because she'd been in the crate for a while. Apparently there was a little bit of a reaction to the chemo treatment, so they had to take a brief hiatus to treat the issue that was arising and then go back to it. And then so we went over to her house, which that's the neighbor, with a little corgi puppy, and it's freaking adorable. And then, she said that my uncle was working over until 3:30 and she wouldn't get back till around 5. So while we were over there, my uncle shows up at like 3 o'clock. It's like, I thought you were working over. He's like, nope. It's like, all right, well, here we are pottying your dog anyway. So yeah, that was all right. We hung out with the puppy for a little bit, and Gracie's kind of funny. She's acting like she's afraid of the cats, and I don't know what that's all about, because used to it was a big deal. She wanted to present them with a cucumber because she saw all the videos on YouTube where cats are apparently afraid of cucumbers, and she thought it was hilarious. And she didn't get the opportunity to test that, I don't think, but she's always wanted to. But in the meantime, she's decided she's terrified of cats. Used to, she wanted to go over there to kind of torment them, and they probably got her attention somehow, and she didn't appreciate it. So then we came back over to my house, and the puppy has little needle teeth, as they do, and people have made the comments about the puppy will bite you if if you're not careful, for one thing, or if you're playing too rough, whatever. So then she started acting like she's afraid of the puppy. It's like, you're not afraid of this puppy, and you love corgis. And we're watching the two on YouTube all the time. I think Cammy and Olivia. I don't know. And I think it's Fiona now instead of Olivia, if I'm remembering correctly, because she was heartbroken when one of the others died. But they have since gotten another one. So she'll watch the videos, and I think she likes it better in theory than in practice. Yeah. But that puppy is stinking adorable. And she gets her little woo-woos in. Kind of a little wannabe howl talking deal. Taz does it too. I like his woo-woos. I don't like his barking so much. And I'm trying to get him to figure that out, and we haven't got there yet, so we need to work on that. But yeah, that's that. So then we came over to my house and came out back to throw the ball for Gidge, because that's priority. Ball is life, and since I said the word, she's gonna bring me her ball again. Yeah, this is life right here, and it doesn't have to be a big play, just a little bit. So yeah, we'll one of the things that got really frustrating for the kid is when she was like 2 or 3, she would take the Chuck It stick from me and want to throw the ball for Gidget, but then she'd get distracted and wander off, and then she'd just be carrying around with the stick. So now Gidget knows if she's got the stick, we're not playing. And she gets very frustrated. And now, of course, Gracie will want to play, but Gidget's just like, nope. Don't believe it. You know, or she would go running after it and try to pick the ball back up in the stick before the dog got over there, and the dog was almost get hit by it. It's like, don't do that. You know, so that's a whole thing. But she was all disappointed because Gidget didn't want to play anymore. You know, and my last video ended very abruptly too. I've mentioned, I think the one I did last night, that my mom came out in the middle of it and was like out here for like 10 minutes just wanting to talk. It's like, okay, so it's like I liked doing the videos here because they would leave me alone on it, and now they're not leaving me alone anymore. Yeah, so like earlier I was out here and ended it abruptly because my dad went out to sit on the porch. It's like, why is this the thing now? You know, because I'll go a long time without caring to come outside, and then just all at once, you know, and I think part of that, ouch, I think part of that has to do with just the fact that the energies are shifting, and they're aware that something's happening, but they're not entirely sure what, why, or how, or any of those details. So it's like they're just naturally coming to where I'm at, and it's like, this is not helpful when I'm trying not to let you know anything about what I'm doing. Eventually it won't matter, but I think the big thing is, you know, I'm pushing 60 videos at this point, so really I'm probably about to the point where it won't matter anymore. But I'm just trying to keep them out of it and allow this to be a thing that I can do without them in the middle of it. Because I know as soon as they find out, they're going to want to watch everything, and then they're going to be... If my uncle brought their puppy up. Then they're going to be pissed when they do start watching the videos, and of course they're going to want to, because what the hell would I be talking about? And yeah. So yeah. You know, I'm just trying to keep the sayers of nay out of my business while I'm trying to do a new thing and not allow other people's opinions or judgments to affect it. Because that's the hard one in my family. Because, because like when I was little, guilt and shame were used to make me fall in line and behave and get the behavior they wanted out of me. So now it's like, it's not that I feel any guilt or shame for any of this. It's the fact that I do know that she's still going to try to go that route. They're still going to try to make me feel bad, and my dad's had this thing for a while where he might walk in the room and maybe I was getting ready to get up from the table to go outside with the dog or something, but because I didn't get up until after he came in the room, it's his fault, and I just only got up because he got in there. I was like, it's one of those things that's really frustrating, because, for a long time, he's been to where it doesn't matter what was getting ready to happen or any of that. He's going to throw out something like, well, excuse me for living, or, some of that bullshit. Or just randomly apologizing when there's nothing to apologize for. Taz. And, uh-oh. Hi. Yes, I love you. Oh, you got me dirty. Clown. Kiss my clown. Yep, thank you. Yuck. Why are you so dirty? Ew. Yuck. Ugh. He's been eating dirt or something. Weirdo. I don't know what's happening in our yard, but there's a few spots where, like, the dogs will go over and just start digging with, like, their front itty bitty teeth and just, like, munching on whatever's there. It's like, is a tree dying? Is there something coming up? What is going on? I don't know what this is, but it's really weird. And my aunt said her little puppy's been doing it in their yard recently too. It's like, okay, so it's not just our yard, but that's still kind of weird. But yeah, anyway, so it's like if I happen to not even reach in front of him, or not directly in front of him, but pick up my cup that was sitting somewhere near him to refill it before I go do something else, he'll like randomly say sorry. And it's like, for what? Why is this what we're doing all the time? Why do we feel the need to apologize for everything? And it's really felt like, in a way, like he's just apologizing for existing at all. And it's like, okay, that's not on me. That is your thing to deal with, and I will not take that on. So it's just not going to happen. It might annoy me, and it's caused some dissension in the past. And I told my brother today that my mom and I had that conversation the other day about how I feel like he's just at the point where he knows where he's going and therefore does not give a shit about being here anymore. And that's a whole ordeal all in it and of itself. But I told my brother about that today, and he said he kind of got the sense that as well, and he said his wife has said as much, that it just feels like he's quitting. It's like, and part of it has been because I've set boundaries, but that's not going to keep me from having my boundaries. That's something that's his to figure out and work through, and I don't think, because he's so dead set on just believing and accepting everything the church has to say, or people who claim to be of the church have to say, that he just doesn't give a shit. And it's like, I get that whole frame of mind because I've been there before, and that was like one of the big things that, was part of my purpose in wanting to understand, so I I've talked a lot about like my nonstop suicidal ideation at times when I was growing up, and just throughout a big chunk of my adult life, even, and how I can link that back specifically to beliefs that I picked up from the church systems. That whole idea that you have to have somebody outside of you to save you, but then at the same time, you're to expect that people will treat you badly because they crucified Jesus, and therefore you should expect it. And I feel like I have heard it described as, in a way, celebrate when you are treated badly because they treated him badly first. Not that's probably really bad wording, but something to that effect. And yeah, that whole ordeal is just a bunch of bullshit. And the problem with handing it over to somebody else to fix you and to heal you is it makes a bunch of people that don't do the healing work, like my mom, who refuses to go to therapy or do anything that could potentially help in any way. Or, my dad, who just obsessively watches the church and religious stuff and then is not very nice to a lot of people. Particularly me at this point. And yeah, that's, since I'm now being used as an insult, yeah, that's exciting. But that too, it's like I knew that was a matter of time because I know how he is, and I've always known how he is. The difference in what I experienced in the past and what I experience now is the fact that now I know that's his, that ain't mine. And I am not going to yield to toxic behaviors, especially when they involve me getting treated like shit because I disagree actively with a lot of what he has to say. And it's funny because he didn't used to be as fixated as he is. And now it's like this obsession with we're in the end times and oh yeah, all that garbage. So if we're in the end times, then what's there to do except wait for Jesus to come back and rapture all the holy people? Except for those are going to be the people that hurt the most when the whole ascension stuff that's going on doesn't jive with the negativity and the crap that they're hanging onto so desperately. And like my dad and I have had decent conversations about religion in the past. Now, it was more acceptable when I was in seminary and when I was doing the good Christian stuff that I was supposed to be doing for appearances, but that whole, when you're doing it just for appearances, you can't lie to yourself. If you're, for me, it just came off that I felt like I was living a lie and I didn't fit this paradigm that everybody in my life seemed to be trying to squash me into. And so that eventually I gave up on trying to fit in. And that's one of those things, that's where that thing on the pattern with if you try to conform, it will not work. And I, as I've said before, I stick out like a sore thumb when I try to conform with the way things are, especially because they're not good systems anyway. If they were effective, they would still be working, people would be happier, and there wouldn't be all the the chaos that people looking at just the physical sphere are seeing. Okay, Tazzy. Yeah. You know, but like if it was actually working, you would have people there that were happier for one thing. And, you know, I decided when I was getting my divorce, it's like I came to the realization, it's like there is no one more anti-Christ's message than the church itself. And I don't know how many times I have heard in churches even that if Jesus came back, would he be accepted? You know, and I've heard stories about like pastor showing up like a homeless man and all the looks and stuff he was getting and that kind of stuff. It's like, because it's all about appearances, and if it's just for appearances, then there's no point to it. There's no substance to it. You want people to believe that you are being righteous, but at the end of the day, you haven't been able to look at the toxic parts of your own personality and your own behaviors. And you know, if just because you try to lie about something and say it's not there, that doesn't mean it's not there. You know, and eventually when you just keep piling more crap on top of it, something's got to give. And it doesn't go like people want it to go. And yeah, I got this big goof with me again. Hi. Don't get me muddy. Oh no, we're gonna fall off the porch. No, don't yell in my ear. That's a whole lot of dog in my face. Hi, sit. You sit. Sit. Sit without eating my face off. Come on. You can do that. He don't want to do that. He's gonna knock my shoes into next week instead. I don't want it. He just threw the ball at me. So yeah, but it doesn't work. If you're okay. One of the things that I have done since I have been back home, I talked a while back about how we had to tear one shed down and replaced it with another one. So we have two sheds. One's just specifically for the yard work stuff, and the other one is currently a mix of yard work stuff because we got my brother's old mower because they don't have enough yard for it now. And so now we have two mowers. So it's also got like the stuff I moved from a house into this little shed. The stuff that I don't need very much or at all right now. So when we were doing that process, you know, I had everything pulled out of the shed, and I was mainly doing it by myself, but I would occasionally pull my mom out and be like, all right, we needed to talk about stuff and figure out what needs to stay versus what's ready to go. And you know, I wrote this thing back then. I don't remember where it's at. It might be in a notebook, but I thought I put it on my computer since then, but I don't know where it's at. But I was just talking about how, you know, we got factories and all these places to employ people and create lots of stuff. So people started accumulating the stuff, and then, you know, because you go from not ever being able to have it to then you can get it and it's mass produced, but then you still don't feel like it's going to be around forever, so you collect it, and then it gets passed on in the families, and now your junk that you didn't really need to begin with gets passed on to, you know, your offspring and becomes their junk. And maybe some of it's worthwhile, but often it's not. You know, and it's just, just junk. And then, I talked about my dad has this tendency, like when I was putting stuff up, I tried to have some kind of system to it. So, like, okay, in the top of this shed are our dog crates. And we have more than is needed, but we're always going to have dogs. And there are 3 in the house right now, because occasionally my kids act up and have to get locked up for a while. It was mainly trash can issues. Ziva and Taz figured out how to get into one trash can that had a lid on it. And it's one of those that had the pedal, and then the pedal ended up getting broken. And then, they can still pull anything out of it. Or we've gotten one that you can wave at the sensor, and now it'll open it up that way. They haven't had the chance to figure it out, more so than haven't figured it out. So, the big thing is when we know something is in there that would entice them to look for it, then we have to make sure to empty the trash out before we go anywhere. Sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. The other thing is they will occasionally shop in the pantry and just like randomly help themselves to chips and stuff. And it's like, this is not a helpful thing. So I have a shelf that I put in front of it, and as long as it doesn't get moved and not put back, then it's not an issue. But otherwise, I pulled a bag of Cheetos out of the box the other day, and it had a hole in it because somebody was able to grab just enough of it to rip a hole in it. I don't know how much they actually got to eat of it. They've gotten into dog treat containers and, opened the lids on those and completely emptied them out. And, they might be half full, they might be all the way full. They've done both. And I think there were like 5 of those in a couple months, and we didn't immediately catch on because, it'd be somewhere obscure, like under the table, but pushed back behind a box or something. So it's like, okay, when's that one from? Deviant children. So sometimes when I'm feeling less trusting of them, they will go in the box. But really, more than anything, I think Gidget will put herself in hers if she knows I'm leaving, but she's not sure if Grandma and Grandpa are staying home. She'll just go in there and sit, and, if she gets spooked for anything, she'll go hide. So that's kind of a thing. So we just keep them out for that, mainly. But I think as much as anything, knowing that it's there helps them to choose to behave a little bit more. Because they're very smart and very, very devious. But they're currently better about it. I don't know what the deal is on that one. But we leave the boxes up just in case. It's kind of a nice threat, I guess. But and we have a couple others. There's one that's for a puppy. My aunt borrowed it for a couple weeks, and they just got a more permanent one for their house. Because this is specifically a puppy-sized box. And then there's a couple others for their dogs. So, like, they were all stacked together, and then I had some, like, pieces of a bed frame that ended up there next to it. But I tried to put stuff organized in some kind of way. And then my dad will go in there, and he doesn't want to maneuver through anything, so he'll just start throwing it in. And I was like, I can't tell you how many things I pulled out of the one shed that were just broken because he just didn't give a shit and threw them in. That's like, that's not cool. It's like, I feel like one of the biggest things I learned from my dad is how to half-ass things, which is unfortunate. And there's been a couple things that I took that approach on, and ever since then it's like, oh, I gotta fix that. That's not gonna work. That's, ugh. I kind of like to pretend it doesn't exist, but it does. Like staining the cabinets and not doing the work to sand them down first. Yeah, that's just a hot mess that needs fixed, and it's on the agenda of things to do, and will probably be happening. God, if anything ever slows down here lately, been chaotic with people in and out of the hospital and just weird shit health-wise. And I remember when I was growing up how my dad did maintenance for the school system, and people would be like, oh, he's so handy, and it must be nice being able to have him there and just fix whatever. And it's like, it would be if he did. But he doesn't give a shit about anything at home like that. And quite frankly, my mom and I are both kind of tired of cleaning up after him, because it's literally like freaking mugs, glasses, whatever, just leave them wherever you sat last and somebody else will get it, right? Because that's women's work or something. I've never heard him say that. But that's kind of how it has felt, with just leaving all the trash. Somebody else's problem. And since I'm pushing back, and like if it's next to his seat on the couch, I don't sit there anymore, so I don't care. As long as it's not something that's going to hurt my dogs, or his dogs for that matter, then he'll look at it until he does something about it. And it's just aggravating, and my mom's told him a couple times to leave my my mugs alone. I have two. I had one, and then I found one that I really liked that was a Nightmare Before Christmas thing, so I got it too. But they've used my stuff in the past to the extent where it just tastes like coffee, and I can't get rid of that taste, and I don't like coffee. So, hot chocolate does not taste the same. So it's like, there are still like 10 to 12 other mugs in there. Why is it my two that, I think this is one that where it just kind of pissed me off today, because she got after him a couple years ago, and then he didn't do it again until today. And I know there has been so much where he is actively trying to piss me off that it feels like it's just a continuation of that, more than anything. Because I checked, there were still like at least 5 mugs in that cabinet that he could have used, but he went after mine, and mine are usually toward the back or off to the side because I don't use them that much. But I don't want them tasting like coffee when I go to make hot chocolate or something. And quite frankly, when it's 90 degrees, I don't give a shit about hot chocolate. So, yeah. Get my fuzzy dog with me. I got to brush one side of her butt the other day, so the other side needs work. But she screeched at me and didn't want me to do anymore, so we quit for the day. But I have not forgot. She's still got another side that needs it. But it's just like with all the other stuff, it's like, as I am more firm with the line in the sand and not yielding to the games and the head trips, it's like it's more childish behavior lashing out at me. And I made the mistake when I moved back. He said something about having worries of being a narcissist at some point, after the deal with my ex. And my mistake was saying that I thought he had a little more awareness and concern for others that wasn't the case. But here lately, I feel like, you take away the image of what it looks like for him, it was my ex who was outside of, it was the them and us situation kind of thing, right? So he sees my ex, sees how he treats me, knows it's garbage, and can't stand my ex. But then now that I'm knowing that a lot of the crap I was taking on before is not mine to deal with, now it's like that's coming out a lot more so. And as my biggest complaint with the church is that's what it creates, a bunch of narcissists, and many of those narcissists also with the victim mentality, because yeah that whole situation, and it's so, I mentioned the one day that my mom's youngest sister was wanting to know what were the triggers, what led to this, and what is the actual issue between me and my dad, and is it repairable? It's like, it's so much beyond, it's way bigger than him. It's not, it looks like this argument and dissension with my father, but it is far beyond that, because it stems from all these ideologies that came from church systems that have been in place for hundreds of years. And once upon a time, my brother said it today, that he made a comment when he was, I don't know if he said in high school or somewhere growing up, about something to the extent of who wrote the religious texts or whatever, rather than just grasping onto them as the sole truth, the only truth, the way you have to live by, the be all end all that crap. And you can't change anything in the Bible, but never mind the people that are actively changing it. With all the different translations that come out, there are things that got tweaked very much. And I remember in seminary, the Bible that we used for most of my classes, I had real extensive footnotes and talked about histories and where certain things came from. And the one that I think bothered me the most was when we talked about the story with the woman at the well, and how, it's this big story that everybody talks about, because let he who is without sin cast the first stone. But we talked about it in my classes, and a bunch of the original texts didn't include that one. That was added like a couple hundred years later or something. It's like, well, who just randomly thought that so many years after Jesus' death we should just go ahead and add this story like it's a legit thing and let everybody buy into it? And there is a lot to be said for the idea of let he who is without sin cast the first stone, except for that's not how it ever plays out. So it ends up being the story that should convict people, but very much doesn't. And I feel like that's the whole purpose of the healing journey in and of itself, is to figure out where the deepest, darkest places of yourself go. And, you know, the big thing I have struggled with on that end is accepting that they're always going to be there. You can't just do away with the parts you don't like. You know, you're always, as long as the things are the way they are in this 3D sphere, at least, you know, there's the whole duality thing that we can't, I mean, it's part of the thing. You know, but even that, like, people take it and try to manipulate it and make it something to keep us separate is the biggest thing. And I think the whole point of the duality structure is to make us realize that we have both good and bad in us, and it's whichever we choose to act on and act from. So, you know, one of the biggest things that I think, like, the hardest lessons I've learned are the ones that have involved me realizing that because I thought I was separate from everybody else, I ended up actively hurting other people, and that in turn also hurt me, you know, because it was a matter of knowing that's not who I was, and yet because I let other people sway me and my view of myself into believing that the whole separation was the way it was, you know, that did a lot more damage for my process. But at the same time, I wouldn't be where I am today without those lessons, and for that I'm grateful. I remember in high school I had this span of time where I, like, started freaking out about the possibility of being seen as a shallow person. It's like, I don't want that. I don't think that would be an option now because I've spent so much time with these darker aspects of myself and realizing that the shadow was a very necessary part of my path, but it wasn't the full story of who I am and who I'm here to be. And yeah. See if there's anything else I want to touch on, because that kind of went a lot deeper than I anticipated when I was just sitting there a little bit ago not knowing what to talk about. Yeah. You know, and I feel like that's, you know, that being part of my process too, I am fully aware that there are probably many people that will come across my videos and be like, yeah, that's not interesting, doesn't get my attention in the first, like, 2 seconds, so moving on. You know, and that's fine. But I feel like as I start processing through things more deeply, and I never know where it's going to take me. Yeah. You know, I mentioned at one point that I feel like it's kind of like I bury the more interesting parts of what I have to say later in the videos. And I think that's a big part of the purpose too, is to let other people wander off, the ones that the story is not meant for, the ones that would immediately set in to attack me for the stuff I talk about later in the videos. I mean, you rush into that kind of stuff and they don't have to listen to anything you say, you know, but you never know where it's gonna go. So yeah. Try not to set it on the speaker or on the microphone. I did that the other day. Yeah, and you know, I've heard some people say stuff, and maybe read in the cards, I don't know, that people will be drawn in by the authenticity, and I think that's the big thing, because like clearly right now the biggest clash I have is with my family, who is Mom just got home, so we'll be about wrapping this up now. My family, who is the most not resonant with anything I have to say. So in theory they won't want to watch my videos, but in practice they'll probably assume they're about them anyway, which they talk about them, but they're still not about them. It's just stories that or lessons that I've learned because of my interactions with them. So there's that. But of course they're not going to see it that way. And at the same time, what I have to say is not for them, because the work that I've been doing has been such a problem for them. And just watching how everything's been falling apart in different ways as far as the connections from what they used to be. And it's like, well, I'm not the person that I used to be, and I'm not afraid to own that and to commit to my boundaries now. So since they don't like that, obviously I'm not one that resonates with them, but somebody else it will, yeah. It's like I got all excited when I had my 8th subscriber the other day, so that was fun. The first 3 I panicked, because why would they want to follow me? What do I have to say that would interest anybody? And then 4 and 5, it's like, okay, not so bad. And then 6 and 7, it's like, cool. And then 8 was like, yeah. So on that end, I've changed a lot just in that span of time, because that's November to June. So that's been a huge thing too. Yeah. I like the changes that I'm making, and I watched a tarot reading the other day that talked about how I think it was Kino Tarot, talking about how I'm not one to try to fit into the I have to do more, shorter and all this crap to make it better or more interesting. It's like that doesn't faze me, because I never know where to start. So it always starts somewhere kind of off and different, and then eventually works its way to the point. But I totally understand why people don't necessarily give a shit about that. But at the right time, when the universe deems its time, it'll go where it's meant to go. And just having put anything out there for people to listen to and maybe resonate with, maybe learn from stories that I have to share in some kind of way. That's my healing process, and also part of the role as a healer, which I've always known that I'm supposed to do. I just didn't know what it looked like. And this kind of feels, weird to think of as this being something that can be a healing thing, I guess. But at the same time, there's, you learn a lot from other people's stories, and I've always thought that. And I like hearing stories other people have to tell. Granted, yeah, not they don't always get my attention, then I might not do it right away. But yeah, when the time's right, then it'll go where it's meant to go and be put in front of whoever it will help, and the universe will use it however it deems fit, and that is okay. And yeah, in the meantime, I don't feel like I have to rush to do like necessarily a video every single day, or so many in a week or whatever. Now when I am feeling like it, then obviously I feel like it, and I've done I think up to 3 at this point in one day before. I've had a few days like that, but it's still, if a few days go by and I don't feel like doing anything, that's not a problem either. And kind of just being at peace with that dichotomy. And that Kyle Gray Divine Masters Oracle deck, there's one that talks about you don't have to always be doing and pushing out or stuff for other people to consume, because that's not what it's about. And it's like, yeah, that's that's very much, if I need a break, then I'm going to take a break. On the other hand, if I want to do 2 or 3 in a day, then here we are. Or if I get cut off abruptly or all goes to hell and I get shat upon by a bird. Yeah, good times. And for what it's worth, no, that's not the only time. I can think of at least 2 other times it's happened in the backyard, and then I also have birds, so it's happened many more times. So yeah, it's not gonna sway me from anything just because like weird shit happens and shit happens. I don't know, I think that's one of those things that's how, in part, how my people will find me, right? When I first started back with YouTube back in March, I walked into my office one morning and went to uncover the birds and open the windows, and like I just had this image pass in my like to the front of my thoughts, that it was like a friend of my twin flame handing him the phone, being like, dude, I found you in girl form. And I heard it clear as day, and it's like, that's kind of trippy. But I mean, it could be that easy, but it's still a matter of, like I mentioned in the last video, in order for him to know and recognize me immediately, I have to know and recognize me completely before that's even an option. And yeah. And I will say, the friend said his actual name, not dude, but obviously I'm not leaving you with that information, so we'll cross that bridge when we get there, and until he knows who I am, we're not getting there. So yeah, that's where that is. I was kind of hesitant about the last video when I posted it, just from the standpoint of, it's like, twin flame stuff immediately. I try to delay that until later on in the video so I don't sound like a complete and total kook, but hey, yeah, I'm not afraid to either, so whatever, I'm weird. And that's been one of those things that I've had to work on embracing with myself too, is truly embracing my weird, because I've been told in so many ways throughout my life that wasn't acceptable and you're supposed to fit in, and that doesn't work for me. But still, navigating the line of all the times it didn't work in the past and trying to adjust to what I know to be true for me and of me now, and not go back into the judgment, which again, that's one of those things that I have to protect my boundaries for that to continue. So boundaries are huge, people. Yeah. On that note, I think I'm going to call it a day and see about going to go skating because it is a lot nicer than it was supposed to be today, and it's freaking awesome and a good day to skate. So I'm gonna go skate. As always, I appreciate you, and until the next time, see you later.